Hello everybody, Jake Raby here, Flat 6 Innovations. I want to welcome you back to another RenVision technical video. Now in today's video, I'm going to be joined by Lake Speed Jr. of Driven Racing Oil. Lake and I have been working together for many years on oil development, used oil analysis, engines, you name it, and we've worked on it over the past decade or so. So Lake and I earlier this year worked on a project with one of my customers from about 10 years ago, and this particular individual had a failure of an engine that we had built probably about 10 to 11 years ago. And that particular engine, he had been keeping samples of his oil for the entire time he'd owned the engine, from the first oil service until the very last. The difference is he never sent those in to be analyzed at the lab. He kept mileage notes and date notes of what oil it was and how much time was on the oil, but he literally never sent those in to have them checked. But the unique thing about this is I had some samples from early on in the engine's life. He had all the samples till the end, and when the engine failed, I got the engine back here, did a post-mortem on it, found out that we had an actual Woodruff key on the crankshaft fail, which ended up resulting in a crankshaft and camshaft gear failure. So we were able to go back and process 15 or so oil samples over a 10-year period, do them all back to back, and see the wear analysis and the wear debris from those particular samples all bunched together. This has been a very eye-opening experience, and we want to share that with you today. So at this point, I'm going to introduce you to Lake Speed Jr. Driven Racing Oil, and I'm going to let him take the show.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
These results paint a perfect picture of a phenomenon that most people are not aware of. And that phenomenon is that used oil analysis doesn't actually detect all the wear metal particles that are actually generated by an engine. You see, wear metal analysis only sees particles that are 15 microns or smaller. In fact, most labs can only see particles that are less than 5 microns. But an engine, as it ages and wears, can create particles much larger than can be detected. And these results paint that picture. For that reason, you have to have a holistic view of all of the sample data generated from a used oil analysis sample. This chart here illustrates the oil health. So it gathers not just the wear metals, but also the viscosity, the oxidation stability of the oil. It paints that whole picture of the health of the oil, which in turn demonstrates the health of the engine. Because if the oil health is going down, that's a #1 indicator that the engine is in danger, even if the wear metals aren't trending higher. In fact, there's a phenomenon we will illustrate today that you can see that the wear metals can begin to drop, and that's actually a sign that the engine is near death. So let's go one by one through some of the key parts on a used oil analysis report. First, right here is silicon. Silicon can come from two sources, primarily. One can be from the gasket materials and the sealants in a new engine, which you'll see right here is very high on the very first samples, completely normal. But then as the engine ages and everything breaks in and those are removed from the system by oil changes, then silicon is dirt. It's outside contaminants, which can cause abrasive wear throughout the engine. In this engine's case, you have a very nice normal pattern, high at the very beginning, it drops down, and then maintains a fairly normal level. There's always going to be some silicon in the oil typically, because silicon is also an anti-foam additive that's naturally in the oil, typically at less than 10 parts per million. Again, this situation shows a very normal trend that nothing was going wrong with the engine from contamination from the outside. Now let's dig into some of the wear metals a little bit closer. Remember, at break-in, there's 10 times more wear than in any time during an engine's life. So it's normal for there to be higher on those first initial samples. And that's exactly what you see right here. There is some high, but what's interesting is about this engine, there is a peak that goes up earlier in life, and then it drops back down and continues on. What you would normally see is it starts off higher and then drops down, much like the silicon slide from the previous example. This one's got a little bit of something different. So that's kind of an early warning sign that there might be something amiss. And here's the information that's really concerning that shows there's something going wrong with the engine, and that's the iron analysis. And what you see here is the iron levels are steadily climbing when they should be decreasing and then stabilizing. So you see the iron levels begin to rise, and then the telltale sign, the iron levels begin to drop. And it's not that the iron levels are actually dropping, it's that the wear debris particles have become so large that now the majority of them are not being detected by the used oil analysis because they're larger than 10 to 15 microns in size, which means the oil analysis can't see it. Very similar, if ever had an overheating situation, the water temperature will rise and rise and rise, but as the water blows out of the radiator, the water level drops. And if the water level drops below where the sensor is, all of a sudden now the water temperature on the gauge will go down. That's because it's not able to detect the water temperature because there's no water in contact with the sensor anymore. Same scenario going on here. The wear metals have gotten so large that now you can't see them. They're dropping, and that's a sign of imminent failure. So one of the key benefits of trend analysis, of having all those multiple samples, is you can begin to take those samples, divide the mileage on those samples by 100, and then actually have a wear trend, oil health trend, by 100 miles. Because the samples are going to vary in length more than likely. And this gives you a standard where you can really have more insight into the results you're getting. And what you see here is initially the wear drops like you would expect on a normal break-in. But then there's that spike that we talked about early on. It was the impact of the health of the oil and ultimately the health of the engine. That was a warning sign. Then it carried along on a very normal basis like you would expect to see. And then it began to trend upward again, showing a problem. And then the kiss of death, the telltale sign that imminent failure is near, is the declining wear metals. In summary, there are two key concepts to keep in mind. The first is look at the oil health as a whole. Don't just focus on the wear metals. You can see from this trend analysis that the health of the oil dipped at the exact same time as that initial wear spike. So those two together painted the picture, there's a problem. And as it trended along, you see those same dips happening again right when the engine is in distress. So you want to pay attention to not just the wear metals, you want to look at the whole health of the oil. The second key concept is you have to have multiple samples to build the trend analysis. Without the trend analysis, you don't have anywhere near as much insight into the health and the performance of the engine and the oil. So the key way to protect your engine and get the most performance and longevity out of it is to have really good trend analysis data on the health of the oil, because that's going to tell you the health of the engine. Thanks for watching.